Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy lunch hour. I grabbed an early lunch and I'll probably grab a mid-morning snack. I hope you're all fueled up because we've got a crazy good fireside for you right now. I am so excited for this founder that I'm about to introduce you to. She is just incredible, fresh off of a recent $35 million fundraising round, doing some really amazing things with the software that her team has built. But before I introduce her, I'd love to just say welcome to everybody who's watching us at Unvalley. We've got over 1,000 people who are coming through here over the next, it started yesterday. We are now in the last 25%, the last quarter. We're in the final quarter of Powder Keg Unvalley. More than 1,000 people will probably come through here by the end of today. And we've got people live with us today on Hopin. And Hopin's pretty awesome because it allows us to do some pretty interesting things like these open roundtables and peer groups. We've got founder roundtables coming up this afternoon. We've got some really great roundtables for people who are looking for jobs. We've got engineering and product leader roundtables. But we also have this one-on-one networking feature. So if you check that out over on the left, if you're watching this on Hopin, it's kind of like chat roulette where you get put into a 3-minute conversation. There's a timer. There are so many amazing people in Powder Keg Unvalley right now. So this is a great way to meet people in this one-on-one networking feature. And I'll be doing that a little bit this afternoon. So hopefully see you in there. And then the expo. This is just like an expo at a normal in-person conference, except it's virtual. So you can check out so many different great companies. But one in particular I wanted to call out is 1150 Academy, because right now they have 3 free online courses that are starting later this week on everything from cybersecurity to coding, just something if you work in tech, that's great to know. So make sure you check that out. 1150 Academy, really great courses in the expo. I do want to give a quick shout out to 90.io. 90 is a revolutionary cloud-based software that is providing small to mid-sized companies with the core tools needed to grow and thrive. They're taking on new clients and they are hiring for a bunch of roles right now. So really cool company. Make sure you talk to either Keegan Giles on the Powder Keg team or drop a comment below and we'll get you connected with 90. And then I also want to give a huge shout out to Alchemy. Alchemy is a video company that helps startups with getting more customers, doing powerful video storytelling. They helped edit our Gary Vee and Brad Feld and Paul Singh quotes from some of our previous Unvalley events. You'll be seeing a lot of videos from this year's Unvalley from Alchemy later. They're based in Kansas City. They're a longtime partner of Powder Keg, and they help produce some of the videos on powderkeg.com. So they're taking on new clients. Make sure you talk to Alden Miller at Alchemy or Ian Illig on the Powder Keg team for more info. We'll get you connected. All right. Well, speaking of video, Liz Giorgi built a pretty amazing video platform and content platform. She is a 2-time founder, currently CEO of Soona, based in Denver, Colorado. I'm going to introduce her in just a second, but first wanted to give you a sneak peek of something that we're building at Powder Keg. I wanted to give you just kind of a 2-minute sneak peek at our platform that we've built out, and I would love to get your feedback on this. While you're watching, please feel free to drop comments in the chat. Feel free to give feedback and introduce yourself, and we will kick things off here with a quick little preview of the Powder Keg platform. After working at high-growth venture-backed tech companies, I built and grew the largest startup community for tech companies in the middle of the country. Our small team helped build awareness for startups everywhere through a top-ranked podcast while covering tech between the coasts in regular columns for VentureBeat, Inc., and Forbes. I traveled to more than 50 tech hubs around the world where I helped other communities, economic development groups, and government entities build stronger tech communities that could support growth at venture scale. Employers today have to compete for talent more than ever because of the mass adoption of remote work. These companies are struggling to build diverse talent pipelines, attract candidates beyond their local geography, and hire outside of internal networks. In a world with increased opportunity and competition, Powder Keg helps companies become known. Do you know the number one reason people join a team at a tech company? It's company culture. And company culture also happens to be the number one reason they quit. That's why company profiles on Powder Keg have information unique to the culture and context of our members' careers in tech. We have quite a few differentiating features that give users a reason to come back and interact here. Candidates can learn about a company's mission, vision, and values while learning about what makes each company's culture unique directly from people who actually work there. It's easy to find information like perks, benefits, and product information like tech stack, all of which are matchable attributes on the platform. More importantly, however, is that their Powder Keg profile also gives employers superpowers to engage with and nurture candidates unlike any other platform. To get your free company profile and learn more about building your 1,000 True Fans to help you scale your company, send me an email at matt@powderkeg.com. We'll get you set up and get you plugged into this community. Well, hey, I am so excited to welcome Liz Giorgi to share her 1,000 True Fans story with us. Liz is a two-time founder and CEO, first of her internet video production company, Mightier, which was acquired in 2020 by Standard, and now of Soona, a Denver-based content creation platform for e-commerce companies. And this 1,000 True Fans story is a concept that we're using to help people tell their story. We're talking about it a lot in Powder Keg right now. And I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation that I'm about to have with Liz. So please help me welcome Liz Giorgi to the virtual stage here at Powder Keg Unvalley. Liz, thanks for being here.
I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, me too. You and I were just talking before we went live here, and it sounds like you've lived your entire life in the Unvalley, going all the way back to growing up in Minnesota.
I am truly a product of the middle of the country. I grew up in northern Minnesota and, went to college in Minnesota and have been really, happy to have lived in Denver for the last 7 years. So I have never actually lived in San Francisco and I have no intention of ever doing so. So it's perfect.
Well, we certainly have nothing against San Francisco, but we do see that a lot of the biggest opportunities tend to be outside the Bay Area and have been overlooked historically, and now are just taking off like crazy. And I think Suna is one of those things. I've seen the growth metrics. I'm excited to dive into the story, but I'm curious before we get into Suna, just to know a little bit about how you got into entrepreneurship in the first place. Do you remember your first entrepreneurial memory? Was it while you were still living in Minnesota?
Yes, I was very lucky to grow up in a family business, which is really my introduction to entrepreneurship. My family had a canoe outfitter for 25 years in northern Minnesota. We took people on canoe expeditions through the Boundary Waters canoe area and also rented canoes and kayaks and that sort of thing to tourists who were visiting the beautiful chain of lakes that is the Boundary Waters canoe area. And I was a shop kid, which to me really just means I was not helpful at all to my family in terms of the day to day operations of the business. But I was a cute sort of sideshow for the tourists who were visiting our shop. And so, who's that cute kid in the back sweeping pointlessly is probably a common refrain. But, working in a family business, you do get to see firsthand just the power of a family business, the power of a small business. We glorify, we really talk a lot about venture backed businesses, but it's really small businesses, mom and pop shops all across this country that make this country what it is. They build community around what they're doing. They service their customers with love and tenacity. And especially in the case of my family, they just cared so deeply about the employees who would come seasonally to help them as lifeguards, as tour guides, as cooks, these jobs that really helped to make an incredibly positive experience for the folks who were taking advantage of their services. And so I really just believe in the power of entrepreneurship to build community and really show you what true community truly is.
That's really cool that you used what you learned there in kind of building your own career, because I can tell from your social media presence on Twitter and other platforms that you've really built a community of true fans around what you're building. Are there other things that you learned just by watching your parents grow that business that you still use today with your team at Suna?
Well, my grandfather founded the business and my mother worked in the business and my grandmother worked in the business. So there was lots of generations of people who were helping to really support the business. I think some of the things I learned, first and foremost, if you treat people well, they will come back. Right. And sometimes treating people well isn't about defining some, crazy customer journey. In tech companies, we're so obsessed with the customer's journey and the product journey. But sometimes it's just about simple things like when something goes wrong, apologize. When you can make something better, do it. When you can surprise and delight someone, absolutely take advantage of that. And so it's the human touches that can really change someone's experience with your business and change how they feel about the business. But the second thing I would say is, my grandfather had this amazing idea. It still to me is one of his best ideas, where anybody who took a canoe trip with him in the summer, he would send them a package in November, and it was an ornament of a canoe paddle, reminding that person of their, canoe expedition that summer. And that's just such a small personal touch, right? But you cannot believe the number of people that, I have met, either through my family or, even at my grandfather's funeral, who told me that they had held on to that canoe paddle ornament for decades, because it was so meaningful to them to really have those memories and remember that experience. And so I really think that my family mastered the process of thinking about how to treat people with respect, kindness, and dignity long after they were done paying for our services.
That's a really cool story. I would love to see what one of those looks like sometime. If I might follow up and see if I can get you to send me a
I'll
photo
send you
of
a picture. I have a
one of
couple,
those.
yes, I have a couple of the
I,
canoe paddles on my
I
wall,
bet you
so I will
do.
send you I'll send you a photo.
Cool. That would be awesome. Well, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs as well, and I know from some of the stories, at least from my father, that they sometimes can be some pressure to take over the family business. Did you ever feel any of that pressure in your family?
Seasonal businesses are really, really tough. There is just no there's just no cutting to the chase more clearly than we had a seasonal business in one of the coldest places in the world, where really we could only service people 4 months a year in a great season. And so it was tough on a family. And, my parents were both public school teachers. They would teach during the year and, help out at the canoe shop in the summers. I think we Yeah, I think the conclusion that we all made as a family, and it wasn't something that I think was very stressful. It was more about, there was some employees who'd been with my grandfather for many, many years, who were extremely dedicated, extremely passionate about it, who felt really called to take it over. And so he ended up selling his stake to some of his, employees in the business. And ultimately, I think we all felt like that was an appropriate close, to that chapter, both for him, but also for us. And I think one of the things that I always try to tell, especially entrepreneurs who, are trying to figure out their exit strategy or trying to think about what they're going to do next, is the impact that that business had on my life, the impact that that business had on my family's life. It pays dividends forever. I will think about, my grandfather's lessons until the day I die. And I hope I can pass some of those lessons on to, my family and my friends. But the people who work for you, the people that show you loyalty, that's a different kind of family. And you have to nurture those relationships too. I think my grandfather did an exceptional job of nurturing the relationships he had, with his key employees. And so I've really tried to do that too, and think about, the my number two, my number three at Suna. How do I make them feel like real owners? How do I make them feel like they're part of something, that they get to control their own destiny and they can take it where they want to take it? And so really thinking about legacy not just as a bloodline question, but as a lessons question, and how do you pass those lessons on to different people, no matter what your originating relationship might be.
Oh, I can't wait to talk more about how you're passing those lessons on at Suna, because I'm sure there are lots of ways you're doing it, just based on what I've heard about the culture from your team on social media, from you on social media. So I'm eager to dive into that. But first, curious how you ended up making the shift to LA. Pretty drastically different culture from Minnesota, having been to both places.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was for me. um, so what I Yeah, so basically, listen, I was a kid who grew up in the 80s. I, watched the nightly news every night with my family. I watched 60 Minutes every weekend, and I really became infatuated with Barbara Walters. I thought Barbara Walters was a really interesting person, and there's a couple of reasons why I was really called to her specifically. First, she asked really tough questions, and I've always been a very naturally curious person. I love asking questions. I love digging deeper. I want to know the why behind the why behind the why. I have a nature to me that is tenaciously curious at times. And I saw that in her, and I really called to me, especially when I was a teenager. But then the second thing that I thought was so interesting about Barbara Walters is, keep in mind, I'd grown up at a time when, women were not CEOs of companies. Women were not running for president. Women were not easily seen in public discourse as leaders. But there was Barbara, on her own, interviewing presidents and prime ministers, and she had access in a way that I thought was really compelling. So I actually pursued a broadcast journalism degree. That's what my background is in broadcast journalism. Really, really recommend journalism as a major, no matter what you want to do in life, in part because it teaches you to be an unbiased thinker. It teaches you to become really, really intentional around, why are we investigating this? What is there to be learned? What does it actually mean to learn something? And perhaps my most important thing that I feel that I really understand how to do well is tell a great story, and get rid of the things that are distractions and hone in on the things that are in fact the truth of what needs to be shared. And so I obviously, did what every young person does who has a broadcast degree. I thought, well, I gotta go to Hollywood. Uh, and I was very unsuccessful there. And I think that's something that I always want to share with people is the first 6 to 7 years of my career were very unsuccessful. I had spent some time bouncing around from internship to internship, working on show to show, would have, gig to gig kind of relationships. And I really felt about the time I was 27, 28 years old, like I was going to burn out because I didn't know where I fit. And I think a lot of young people, feel like they've got to find the thing right away, and that's going to, they're going to find their calling. And of all the obscure things I decided to do, on a whim, a friend of mine asked me to help with a YouTube channel for some cutting room floor footage of a show that they were working on. And so I learned everything I could learn about YouTube and how to make it work for content. And this was in 2009. So
Wow.
this was at a time when,
Early days.
yeah, YouTube was in its infancy. Uh, and it was like an accident, right? It was a complete accident, but it helped me kind of get on a path of finding what I was passionate about. Suddenly I was learning and I was succeeding, and I was getting hired by, different television. I was getting hired by PBS. I was getting hired by Big Ten Network. People were hiring me to do this thing to help them with YouTube channels. And believe it or not, that was what sort of for the next 4 to 5 years of my career. Yeah, about 4.5 years. I just successfully bounced around creating, digital content. But you know what? It helped me gain the insights that I needed to go do my own thing and gain the confidence I needed to go to where I wanted to go. So eventually I moved to Denver. I had a gig in Denver. I fell in love with the mountains, fell in love with the culture, and thought, well, I'm doing all these YouTube channels. I don't need to be anywhere particular to do this. Let me go live where I want to live. And beautifully enough, I got here, and very shortly thereafter, I realized, oh, you know what? I think I actually am going to start a company that specializes in creating this content for the internet. And how do we make content better for the internet, better for consuming on the internet? All a very long-winded way of saying, uh, it is entirely possible to meander throughout your career for 7 to 10 to 20 years, and find what you were meant to do by accident, and find your people by accident, and to just lean into those accidental opportunities so that you can in fact find what you were always meant to do.
What would you say to someone who maybe feels like they're meandering? Maybe they even feel a little bit lost in their career right now. Would you have a message for them based on your own experiences?
Oh, absolutely. I always tell young people it's more important who you do things with than what you're doing. And in the case of, these projects I was talking about, I was working with people that I had great relationships with, that I had built awesome, positive working dynamics with. And it was a rare instance where maybe I wasn't interested in, the history of cheerleading or the Big Ten Network, but I was deeply interested in working with the people who were involved, and I really wanted to learn from them and get to know them and build a deeper relationship with them. And even now in my business here at Soona, it's actually because Haley and I worked on many, many projects together of other types that we built this dynamic relationship that then allowed us to discover that we wanted to build Soona together. And so, who I have built things with, who I have chosen to spend my working hours with, has really helped to drive me in a direction of discovery, connection, and really just learning what exactly is it that I want to do, because you feel so much freedom, you feel so much safety. You're not looking over your shoulder to see if someone's coming up behind you, because you know that you're working with someone you can trust, and you just really cannot imagine how important that is.
I can imagine. I can't imagine. I very much relate to what you're saying. Um, Suna, which came first, the idea for the business or the co-founder connection?
The co-founder connection came first by a long mile. I met Haley at a Halloween party in 2015.
Set
And
the scene.
she
What was that like?
yeah, set the scene. So I was visiting my brother in Minneapolis, and it was Halloween weekend, and he said I had just gone through a horrible breakup, and I was sort of low on myself, a little, maybe even a little mopey.
We've all been
And
there.
yeah, and he said, "You're not gonna sit in my apartment and mope. Like you're gonna come with me to this Halloween party." And I said, "But I don't know anybody at the Halloween. I didn't pack a Halloween costume. I'm just totally ill prepared for this Halloween party." He said, "Suck it up, figure it out." So I'm not
That's the
kidding you.
Midwest love right there.
Yeah, I know. I went outside, I grabbed some sticks off the ground, and I fashioned a little bird's nest, and I made a little bird's nest and put it on my head, and I drew some feathers on my face with some makeup. And I went to this birthday party as a bird's nest. It was not a great costume, but I made it work. And I look across the room, and there's just this fabulous costume, a woman dressed like Agatha from the Grand Budapest Hotel, which was a movie that I really, really loved by Wes
Oh yeah.
Anderson. And it was Haley. And it was really, I mean, it sounds so silly. It was love at first sight. I was like, I don't know who she is or what she's doing, but I love her costume. I got to talk to her. So, uh, we chatted a little bit, and I came to find out she was a professional animator. She was, doing the agency life at that time and was really itching to do something different. And so we exchanged phone numbers, and I kind of didn't think anything of it, but I thought, well, it was fabulous to meet another woman who's really interested in production. About 3 months later, I had some gigs with some clients where we needed animation work, and so I messaged Haley and said, "Why don't you come help me with these projects? Come do some animation for me." And within about 6 months, our working together was so successful that she came and joined me full time at my first company. She became our director of animation and ultimately built out an animation department at our first company. I got to see her lead and hire and develop a team. And I'm just so proud of that time we spent together. We made dozens of ads together. We, did dozens of creative treatments together. We had made millions and millions of dollars together. It was extremely successful, but it was actually through that deep working relationship and through that time together that we started seeing a lot of the same problems and going, okay, if we want to solve this problem, how would we do it? If we want to solve the cost problem, how would we do it? If we want to solve the time problem, how would we do it? We just both became so deeply passionate about making creativity accessible to any brand at any scale. And we knew that it would be almost impossible. But that's what's so funny about who you do things with. Haley makes me feel hope about everything. Everything is figure outable. We've figured out way harder things. We had to figure out how to shoot something on the side of a mountain. We had to figure out how to close down a Target store for 12 hours. We've had to figure out impossible things. And so I never felt hopeless about the idea of Suna. And eventually, the idea of Suna just became so grand to the both of us that we finally looked at each other in October of 2018 and said, we're going to have to sell Mightier and go build this puppy. So that's how it came to be.
What do you think clicked for Haley in terms of latching on to the idea at first?
Well, I think a funny thing about Haley and I is we are both, I mean, we're fundamentally very different people. I am extremely extroverted. She's much more introverted. I'm very bold and brash, and she's very thoughtful and considerate. But it's kind of these balances on the scale for us that help us really test ideas, and for her, I know that I have always helped her be more brave in her decision making. And I know for me, she's always helped me be more thoughtful in my decision making. And so I think part of it is, just between us and everyone listening, there's only so many commercials you can make for Fortune 500 companies before you look at each other and you say, I think I've just run out of the juice to keep helping these people. I want to help our friends who are creating a Shopify store. I want to help other small entrepreneurs who are just getting started. And so I think for both of us, but especially Haley, she was just so motivated by this idea that we could help the little guy win. And I think that is what we do at Suna. I do think that we help the little guy be successful.
What did you and Haley learn in building Mightier about storytelling? And you mentioned your journalism degree also gave you some of this insight of how to tell a great story. Um, what have you learned about telling a great story? Is there a common denominator amongst all great stories?
There's a lot of common denominators amongst all great stories. I mean, one of the most essential qualities of a great story is that you have to know who the character is that you're supposed to root for. And you don't always need to know who you're supposed to root against or what you're supposed to root against, but you always have to know who you're rooting for. Uh it has to be and there has to be a reason. You can't just put a cape on someone and say they're the hero. You've got to emotionally speak to a why. Why do I want this person to win? And that's exceptionally important. In entrepreneurship, by the way, this is what really great founders do. They make themselves sort of the face of a business, and they make them easy to root for by being vulnerable, by sharing the ups and downs, by being very transparent about their mess ups and their successes. And so this gives us all a really big reason to want that founder to win, right? Second, I think all great stories fundamentally respect the hero's journey. And what that means is that it can't just be all up and to the right. It has to be ups and downs. There has to be things that allow us to see what is a reflection of real life, which is that real life is ups and downs, right? So the hero's journey respects those ups and downs, reflects those ups and downs that we all experience in real life. And then I think the last thing that is just universally true for Haley and I specifically is you have to represent the world as it is and not necessarily just through the bullshit speak of what you want it to be. I think a lot of businesses, especially when they're trying to apply storytelling mechanisms, they'll want to sort of show the perfect version of life. But I truly believe that when you are trying to connect with people, when you are trying to speak to people, you've got to speak to their problems. You've got to speak to what they're struggling with. You've got to speak to how they're going to overcome those things. In overcoming things, we become better. But if we don't acknowledge what is to be overcome, what is there to overcome? It's all it's illogical. And so we try to always, 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 from a place of deep empathy and compassion, acknowledge what is hard about running a small business, acknowledge what is hard about growing your business, and then show up where we can to be part of that solution.
Tell me a little bit about the hero's journey for you and Haley. You decided time to sell Mightier and start a software company, right? Or at least
Yeah,
software powered
essentially.
company. Yeah.
A software company, ultimately. Well,
Yeah.
we say a creative software company, but
I like it.
I mean, our hero's journey is such a wild array of ups and downs. I mean, we decided we were going to sell Mightier, and we knew that in order to do that, we really need to get some momentum behind us. So we hired a broker, which was an interesting experience. I learned so much about the process of selling
Oh,
a
I
business,
bet. I bet.
uh, which we'll save for another day because it might be a little bit long and boring for this conversation.
Sure.
Uh,
Would love to chat about that story sometime though.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that is it taught me a lot about how to package up your baby and make it something that other people can love, right? And that's hard. It's hard to look at your business, all the warts and all the glowy goodness, and try to see what is real and how you share that with others. And so then once we started down that road, we also applied to Techstars. So applied to Techstars Boulder, and applied without even having a company name. The name Soona did not exist yet. That was still yet to be discovered as part of one of our many adventures. Haley and I truly embrace spending deep working time together. So When we needed to name the company, we went to Malibu together for a week and spent time, on the beach and eating great food and really connecting and trying to, through the work of being together, create ideas of how we might name the business. And every single time we have a big challenge. Last year, we knew we needed to really scale the business and build a massive facility. So we went on a massive road trip through Utah and Arizona together, right? And that road trip is even a journey of, are we going to love each other or hate each other by the end of this trip? Luckily, knock on wood, we always usually love each other by the end of the trip. Um, so, we got into Techstars Boulder. We were very lucky, but we were a strange business for Boulder's program insofar as we only had an MVP of our product. We only had, just sort of the initial tech of how a virtual photo shoot would work. We didn't have a name. We didn't have customers. We didn't have any sort of indication that this business was going to work. And so we spent the vast majority of what we were doing at Techstars just building tech and building some kind of proof that the market would actually want what we were building. And that's something that I always point to as being it's so difficult, but it's so informative in your journey as a CEO and as a founder. You have to go through those valleys of uncertainty to get to high conviction. And once you get to high conviction, then you got to be on top of that rooftop, sharing your conviction with the world. And so part of my Techstars journey was that valley of sorrow, but doing the reps, doing the work to really get to conviction. We graduated out of Techstars, started running a beta, and our beta was mostly in-person photo shoots. You could only do soona in person for the first 6 months of what we were offering to the public. And then we finally launched to the public in January of 2020 with our virtual photo shoot. So what fabulous timing for us too.
Wow. Tell me about that. Launching in the middle of a pandemic with a
Well, it was right
in
before the
person
pandemic.
of
Yes, right before
Oh,
January
yes, right
2020.
before.
So
That's right. Yes,
yeah,
that's right. These
um,
last 2 years feel like 20 to me. So,
yeah, everything feels like it's blurred together to certainly
yeah.
some extent. Listen, launching in January 2020, like wide-eyed, and at that point, I believe we had raised about $1.3 million. We were about to go raise more money on the premise of look at how successful this beta had been. Was very lucky. I closed a financing round on February 28th of 2020 with Starting Line Ventures for $3.6 million. And then in March 2020, the business went to zero.
Wow.
And I still to this day feel so grateful to Ezra and his team for not giving up on us in that moment.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, but talk about such an important inflection point because I remember distinctly looking at Haley and saying, okay, we could just kind of ride out however long this COVID thing is going to be, stop running, try to come back later. Or we could take this virtual photo shoot product that we've built, try to adapt it to work in a more distributed environment where we could actually run it out of people's homes and see if we can run the business that way. And so I got in my car and with my dog, and we locked ourselves in quarantine at my CTO's house for 10 days, completely rebuilt the business, completely rebuilt the operations of the business, relaunched the business at the end of April 2020. And, it sounds so cliche to say it's always been up and to the right from there. It hasn't always been, but it feels like it. I mean, basically from May 1 2020 to today, we've onboarded 11,000 merchants to the platform. We've since raised over $45 million, have grown the business just absolutely exponentially with 3x and 4x growth years the last 2 years, and have really just enjoyed the rewards of our early decisions and our early collaboration. But the downs are in there too. I mean, certainly, my business has a massive operation. Soona has a massive operation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we all remember the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, and that had a massive impact on our culture and on us as a community here at Soona. When I look at other Haley got married in the last 2 years to her fabulous husband, Mitch. So many things, the ups and downs in that journey, and it goes back to why who you do it with is so important. I feel really grateful that I get to do it with the people I get to do it with, including Haley, but also now my COO, Dave Mellencamp, my CTO, Cal Bethune, my chief of staff, Martine Reed. I mean, these fabulous people who, for one reason or another, have decided to join us on this journey.
Speaking of the who, talk to me a little bit about those early customers of Suna, the ones before lockdown when you were still in beta doing in-person photo shoots. What made it what the ones that became true fans, the ones that came back again, even after Suna relaunched on the new platform, it refactored in May. Was there something about that original beta that was sticky and stayed through uh, to the May product?
Technology products are difficult for a ton of reasons, right? Because everybody always wants something to be a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit, more efficient. But I think some of the things that we've always tried to do at Suna is just show deep love and respect for our clients and our customers. So even when I think about those very first, merchants on the platform, always giving them a venue to give us their feedback, let us know what they didn't like, what they do like, and not letting their feedback just go into a black hole. Actually thinking about how to respond to that feedback and help if we can, or prioritize if we can, something that would make it demonstrably better for their business. Those early users told us things that, about, for example, how we were delivering assets or how we were scheduling photo shoots, that we took to heart and then made changes to reflect what they needed. Another thing about early users that I really can never, emphasize enough is you can ask them what they think at any point in their journey, but no time is going to be more important to get that feedback than when they are right out of the experience, right out of having an experience, because it's freshest in their mind. They know exactly how it went, as it just happened, and so trying to create time in your own schedule to say you're important to me, your feedback is important to me, and not really avoiding it just because it might be bad news. I always love asking the question, what are you afraid to tell me? And really embracing and leaning into that. What are you afraid to tell me? Because you'll get answers that are the big, hairy goals that you got to go after later. You'll get the things that might just go unknown or hidden forever. But then the last thing I would say is I just really cannot express enough, how important it is to be a cheerleader for your early customers. We worked so diligently to promote their products on social media, to share their great images on Instagram, to be champions of their stores and link to their stores in our email campaigns, right? And so, yes, you want them to be a champion for you, but you also need to be a champion for them.
That's great. I'm sure that created a sense of community amongst those early customers. And it seems to me some of the things that you were doing there and eliciting feedback from your early customers is something that you mentioned you learned in journalism school, which is unbiased thinking
Yeah,
and
100%.
being able to hear things. Can you talk a little bit about that skill of unbiased thinking? Is that something that is a part of your culture at Suna?
I truly think we try to have what we try to say that we're a data-driven creative company, which for a lot of people is like an oxymoron, but I don't think that it's an oxymoron. I think that when you are willing to confront what is true, and then you're willing to sort of look at it from all sides, you actually do see the world in a more creative way. You don't become as attached to your ideas, you don't become as attached to outcomes. I also really try to, in terms of unbiased thinking, especially when leaders join my organization, I we all have a bias to win. We all have a bias to succeed. And that's because life teaches us to be biased for success. From the time you go to school, it's get straight A's, get 100% on this, get 4.0s, get perfect attendance. We are taught, we are indoctrinated into a system of to be perfect is to be good, to do what is going to be successful is to be good. but it also teaches you not to take risks. It teaches you not to try new things. It teaches you not to be bold. It teaches you not to go along the fringes of things and see what you can discover. And so, one of my most important lessons for new leaders, and one of the things I try to impart on them as much as possible here at Suna, is that you will never be punished for failing. You will be celebrated for failing. Because when you are failing, you are learning. When you are failing, you are striving. And when you are failing, you are reaching for something bigger than what is easy and what is in front of you. And so, that is just an example of how having not a bias for success, believe it or not, having a bias for success means you will do the safest possible thing every single time. And I don't want to do the safest thing. I want to do the biggest thing. I want to do the bravest thing. So that's some of the ways that unbiased thinking really comes to play at Suna.
I imagine that's especially hard in the darkest moments. And have to imagine that March to May in 2020 were some tough months for the company. Can you tell me a little bit about how you navigated that emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, oh Lord, I think I have always tried to put myself in situations with people where emotional safety is just expected and respected. And what I mean by that is say how you feel. Don't sugarcoat how you're feeling for my comfort, for my safety. And especially when things are hard, especially when you think things might fall apart, be open to listening to other people's experiences of that. I think one of the silly things about the CEO job is that we tend to enter a meeting, we tend to enter a room, and then everyone goes quiet and waits to see what we're going to say. And I witnessed this happen, especially in virtual rooms, right? Uh, when you're in a virtual room and everyone's chattering, and then you've joined the room, and now zippo, it's gone silent. And I really, during that time, tried to figure out how do I teach everyone that I don't need to speak to lead. I don't need to speak to understand. I actually can just sit here and listen and absorb and be part of your experience. That is so hard. Oh my God, that is such a discipline. And I'm still learning that discipline. Also, I think it's important, especially now with younger generations, to implement tools and structures into your meetings, into your company culture that invite people to share how they're really doing, um, in a simple vernacular, that in a simple vocabulary that is easy for everyone to use. So at Suna, we use the color system. It's very rare for you to start a meeting with me without me asking, what color are you today? And what color you are today can mean a lot of different things. You can be the rainbow, you can be cyan, but if you're red, I don't think you're doing very good. Like that's like full stop, something's wrong, can't move ahead. uh, but if you're green, you're good to go, everything's money, right? Like, we have kind of developed a shorthand for how people are feeling, and that pulse check, uh, it's a shorthand that allows us all to share how we're doing without having to share all the details of why we're doing that way, unless we want to. And increasingly, I think that kind of empathy is really demanded of great companies and great leaders.
What do you think it is about those first few employees that I guess I should ask, what is it about Suna that you think clicked for those first few employees to join the team after you and the co-founder and maybe your first couple
Yeah.
folks?
Oh God, I mean, I don't know. You'll have to go, ask Val and Nathan and and I mean Day. I think some of the things that initially, to me, I would hear in interviews or I would hear in conversations is just sort of the perception of, yes, it's a tech company, but we embrace creative thinking. We embrace doing things outside the norm of how things are done. And that's very true. I mean, one of our first cultural pillars as soon as everyone is creative. And that to us means that yes, there are a lot of jobs at Suna that are creative by definition, but there are also many jobs at Suna, at HR and finance and operations, that we want to embrace the idea that you can think creatively. Just because it's been done a certain way before doesn't mean it needs to be done that way now. And so a lot of folks really come to Suna as an opportunity to start expressing their most creative thoughts, their most sort of new thoughts that they've ever had about their industry or their area of expertise. I also think initially many people came to Suna simply because they felt such a visceral understanding of the power of creativity. And what I mean by that is they either ran an e-commerce store themselves or they had a family member, a friend who ran an e-commerce store, and or they were just an Instagram addict and they shopped too much and they saw firsthand how a beautiful photo, a beautiful video could compel a different outcome, how it could actually create a totally different outcome. And the idea that we would bring access to that, that we would make that easier for folks, that's why having a North Star that is so easy to comprehend. Don't make your vision, don't make your mission something hard to understand. Make it easy to understand. At Suna, it's quality content for all. We believe everybody who wants to have beautiful content should be able to afford it and be able to get it. Not hard, not difficult to comprehend. Make your future, make your North Star easy to comprehend, and it will make it easier for people to place themselves in it and find their own calling to it if they feel it.
That's magnetic. I love it.
We try.
When did you know you were on your way to 1,000 true fans? And your first 1,000 true fans, I guess I should say.
It's gonna sound so silly. I think I always knew long before Suna even had a name, probably back in January 2018. Haley and I went a painting workshop together in January 2018. I was actually on this painting workshop that we decided we're going to try to figure out the methodology, the technology to make this virtual photo shoot experience possible. I think I knew at that painting workshop that it was bigger than us. I didn't know who the fans were going to be. I didn't know who was going to love it. I just knew that it felt so desperately needed in the world in a way that was much bigger than us. That I knew we were on our way to something right. Probably when I knew we were on our way to our first 1,000 true fans was about a year ago. I was at a Starbucks getting a coffee, and two women walked up to me, said, "Are you Liz Giorgi?" I said, "Yes, I'm Liz Giorgi." And they said, "We use Suna for our e-commerce store, and we just made our first $1 million. And I just want to give you a hug and say thank you." I mean, amazing. Congratulations on making $1 million. For people that don't know, 0.9% of women-owned businesses will ever make more than $1 million. And so when you can make that kind of economic outcome a reality for people, it's not even about them being our true fans. It's about us getting the heck out of the way and making it possible for their dreams to come true. And we hope they are fans in the process, but I am just as much their fan in return. I feel that when a woman or when anyone is able to achieve those kinds of impossible outcomes, I'm like the loudest cheerleader on the sidelines, rawing on their success.
That's great. I love that story, and I'm sure you're helping so many others. You mentioned 11,000 different merchants on the platform today. Obviously, e-commerce is booming right now. How can Powder Keg and the Powder Keg community help support you and Suna reach your next 1,000 true fans?
Well, what a kind thing for you to want to do. Well, one of the things that I think all of us felt is that e-commerce grew like crazy in the pandemic. So there's about 6.5 million e-commerce stores online at the beginning of the pandemic. Today, there's about 12.5 million e-commerce stores. So if you or someone you know or someone you love started one of those e-commerce stores, we hope they'll come check out Suna at suna.co. But if you're not an e-commerce store person, you're just a person in the world who wants to support Suna and share what Suna is doing, I'd really encourage you to get one of our free headshots. Once a week, we give free headshots at Suna. We call it Headshots for All. You might not be selling a product, but maybe you have to sell yourself in your career, in your business, or in your services industry, whatever it is you're doing with your career. I really believe that making a photographic first impression online is so, so important. And so if you go to soona.co/headshots for all, you can sign up to get a free headshot in one of our now 5 locations across the country. We're in Denver, Austin, Minneapolis, Seattle, and Los Angeles, and soon to be more places where you can get a free headshot on Soona.
That's such a cool offering. And I really hope people here that are listening today or who are listening on the podcast version of this conversation take you up on it. It's such a cool product, it's such a cool mission that you're working on. And I'm so glad that you reached your first 1,000 true fans and sounds like many, many thousands more since then. Um, is there anything else you want to share before we close today?
I mean, I hope that we delivered some inspiration and some motivation. I can't imagine what else what else there is to say.
You covered so much. This was so great. I encourage people to give you a follow if you're watching this live. We're putting the links here in the chat, but you also can check out Soona in the virtual expo. We'll be linking up all the different resources that was mentioned here by Liz. And Liz, just one more time, thank you so much for being here with Powder Keg and Unvalley today.
Yeah, what a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Liz, thank you so much. That was great. Just like that, we were halfway done with day 2 of Powder Keg Unvalley. I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited for the sessions this afternoon. In the meantime, make sure you're checking out the virtual booths. This is a great opportunity to connect with some amazing companies from around the Unvalley. You can connect with them live, learn about what they're building and the teams they're assembling around them. Additionally, you can check out the one-to-one networking feature. This is a great part of any community. It's those organic relationships, right? Go and connect on the one-to-one networking feature, build up some of those relationships, and really get the most out of Powder Keg Unvalley. Okay, on to the giveaway. This one is special. Previous Powder Keg Unvalley speaker, Steve Case, in his book, The Third Wave. But we're giving out 3 of them. Yeah, that's heard it. 1, 2, 3. We're giving out 3 copies of Steve Case's book. And our winners of The Third Wave by Steve Case is Lindsay McGuire, not to be confused with the Disney star from my childhood. Lindsay McGuire, you're the first winner. Kelly McMillan, you're the second winner. And Chad Toppus, you win the 3rd copy of Steve Case's book. Y'all, thank you so much for making this a great Unvalley so far. Looking forward to finishing out the day with you, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Nate. That was fantastic. I love the conversation with Liz. I'm glad you're still here joining us with Powder Keg Unvalley, everybody. Real quick, I wanted to show you something kind of cool here about Hop In. I wanted to point your attention to the events tab over here on the left. If you're joining us on Hop In, this is pretty freaking cool. You can schedule meetings with anybody here on Hop In, and not just while they're online. So first of all, make sure you're on the event tab here. Go over to the people's tab, and you can see all 1,000+ people who are attending Unvalley. You can see who's live. So I'm going to drop Doyle a message here. I'm just going to be like, what's up, Doyle? I don't know, Doyle, if you're watching here, but what's up, man? I can even schedule a meeting with Doyle and suggest a time. Hey, let's catch up. Schedule the time. Send an invitation directly to Doyle. It's all integrated with calendars and everything. So wanted to encourage you, just while you're here at Unvalley, connecting with everybody, feel free to reach out and connect with some people. We've got some really great stuff coming up here later this afternoon. We've got roundtables going on right now. So jump into the roundtables. And I'm going to be back live here on Hop In on the Fireside Chat main stage in just about a half an hour with Jesse Middleton, who's an amazing venture capitalist, specifically focused on community-powered companies, really at the forefront of that. He was employee 1 at WeWork. So I'm going to ask him some interesting questions about his experience there. I hope you will come back and join me, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or LinkedIn. Hopefully you're here with us at Unvalley with 1,000 other people from around the country, building high growth technology companies wherever you happen to live. See you in the next session. Thanks, everybody.